We'll get started in just a second. I'm Allison Kaplan. I'm the editor-in-chief of Twin Cities Business. Thank you for joining us today. And there are our panelists, like magic. They just appear. It's their special power. On behalf of the whole magazine, I want to thank you for joining us for Studio TCB Insights, a webinar on rethinking meetings and events. I want to just acknowledge that it is a heavy day here in the Twin Cities, and we were all talking about that this morning and, you know, talking about events. But you know what? I feel like the people we have with us today, you guys know more than anybody that often the show has to go on. Events are such a critical way to bring people together, and that's what we need to talk about doing right now. So we're going to get started, and we know that this is a time, we've felt it ourselves at the magazine, we're all thinking about what do we do about that meeting in the fall, about the gala, should we cancel, should we postpone? We have a lot of questions, and so we brought in the heavy hitters, the true experts here in the Twin Cities, and without further ado, I'm going to introduce them and we can get right to it. Also want to just mention to feel free to post questions as we go along. We'll get to as many as we can in the Q&A and chat, so just post them on the side. All right, let's start with Tim. Tim McVean is Vice President of Sales and Marketing at AVEX Audio Visual, a Minneapolis-based company which specializes in everything from small client meetings to 10,000 person galas. He's going to wow us with some options at our fingertips today. Bruce Ballanger is the general manager for the Earle Brown Heritage Center, owned by the City of Brooklyn Center in Minnesota. Bruce was part of the opening of Earle Brown in the summer of 1989 as the operations director, and for the past 10 years, he's served as general manager. And last but certainly not least, Amy Zaroff, the one and only founder and creative director of Amy Zaroff Events and Design, a boutique multi-channel creative agency that has produced over 1,500 events across the US and Canada, known for their attention to detail, memorable activations, and expertise in media production, hospitality, graphic design, and experience and brand marketing. Amy and Tim, and I think Bruce too, you're all also part of the newly created Minnesota Events Coalition, which maybe we can talk a little bit about, but it's a group that is working to bring events experts in the Twin Cities together to talk about best practices and the health and wellness and future success. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I am going to turn it over to the three of you. I think first and foremost, let's talk about what the heck we should do now. How do we think about the events that we had on the calendar for the rest of 2020? Bruce, do you want to start?
Sure. Thanks, Allie, and thanks Twin City Business for putting on this webinar. It's a wonderful thing. I think a lot of us are sitting here thinking, what is going on? What's our next step? And currently, we're not in the Stay Safe Minnesota plan with our governor, so it's really a challenge right now for all of us, not knowing what to do. I think the restaurants and the church's latest information gives us a little bit of a foresight what's coming, but I think if you have a current event that's in June or July, I would say you need to look at going virtual with it. After that point, depending on the number that you have in that group, I think you need to start looking at a hybrid. You know, where you can have some attendees actually come to the facility and attend, and then other ones on the webinar watching it, because I think we're going to be reduced in capacity if it's at 25% or less, or even maybe a little bit more. You know, those are the challenges that we're going to be dealing with.
Okay. Amy, what about you? What are you telling clients right now for the rest of 2020?
I would say that the future of events in 2020 is changing daily, and none of us have a crystal ball. So the guidelines make it clear that in the absence of a vaccine, there will continue to be these guest count stipulations and guest concern about attending events. So key decisions have to be made. And my guidance to my clients is that through 2020, we consider virtual or guest count stipulated events. Bruce and I have had this conversation offline as well. So while my heart does go out to the venues, currently those venues can only be used for religious services or ceremonies and no receptions. So our guidance is to be proactive versus reactive. If you are a corporate or nonprofit entity and you can take it virtual, now's the time.
Tim, anything to add on that front?
You know, I think Amy and Bruce said it pretty well. We're operating in the same mode through the end of the year. We know that these will be what we're calling hybrid events, where there will be a certain amount of people in the room live and then a large audience online. Imagine this meeting in 3 to 4 weeks, where maybe we're sitting in a room in a small studio with a small group to ask live questions, and then there's an audience of 300 or so. So I think that's the plan. I think the message from us, from AVEX as a general, our sort of philosophy is that we are optimistic. We think that there's going to be a lot of information coming out in the next couple of weeks that will give us some more guidance. I think that if you listen to some of the Minnesota Department of Health, recordings that they've put out, a lot of this is do a little bit, wait and see what happens, and then take the next step. So we are crossing our fingers for good news, and we're crossing our fingers for a quick return to some sort of normal.
Right. Before we talk about some of your great ideas for virtual events, Bruce, I just want to ask you how you are using this time. How are you preparing Earle Brown Heritage Center, your venue, for the future, for the near future?
Sure. Right now there's so many questions out there, but we know that we have to protect our staff, and we know we also have to protect the people attending. So we're working on getting some PPE. We're working on signage. We're looking at camera systems, infrared, to see if that's something that we want to offer or install. We've had prices from $1,300 all the way up to $80,000. So it's a wild card right now. We're also, we went through, we completely cleaned the facility after we had to shut down in March. And now what we're doing is we're really looking at our rooms, the square footages, what we can actually hold in each room. And we've, depending on the type of set, you're reducing it down to 20% all the way up to about 40% of what the normal room occupancy can handle. So there's going to be some challenges when we are able to open. We might have to shift groups from a smaller room to a larger room.
Okay. Amy, if you don't want to cancel and the show has to go on, how do you start thinking about that virtual event? How do you create something online?
So it's a great question, and it does not have to be complicated. The first thing to do is to define the results that your brand wants to achieve by having this event in the first place. Then engage a trusted planner or audiovisual partner to help you bring that to reality. Pinpointing the audience experience is the first step into deciding, what it's going to feel like and look like. And we always believe that you need to engage all of the senses, and you can still do that with a virtual event. Next, creating moments of audience engagement and interactivity, and that you can do with partners or internally as well. Producing a live and a pre-recorded experience. So we like to do live and as live type of elements in there, and then following up with the participants afterwards to gauge the success. And I think if you follow those steps, it may seem simplistic here, but it really can work.
Okay. Well, maybe on that note, Tim could show us some tricks up his sleeve as we start thinking about the new ways of being interactive. Tim, how are you thinking about that from an AV perspective?
You bet. Well, let's see if I can do this while 300 and some people watch. I'm going to share my desktop. And so obviously our job as the tech people is to bring all of these great products together in one spot. And Amy did a really good job of explaining some of the things that we do, but pre-recording some or all of your event, depending on what you're looking to get out of it, is a huge time saver, and it makes the production quality go way up, right? If we can do a couple of takes with your CEO and make sure we get that message just right, there is a way to do that in a tasteful, authentic way that I think works. So without further ado, a couple things that we're looking at here, if everybody can see my screen. We are showing the virtual experience. It's a website that we put out. This is just a demo, avexstreams.com. One of the biggest things I wanted to talk about today, obviously, you know, having a landing page that brings all of your information into one spot is really helpful to help organize everything for your guest. Doing an agenda with links to all the different sessions, putting the sessions right on the homepage so that they can click on it and get right in. You can put this behind a paywall. You can make it free. There's a lot of different options there. I won't really get into that. One of the things that people are asking me a lot about is, how do I have sponsors? How can I have people pay for sponsorship for my event? That was a huge revenue generator for people that did meetings and events, and it still is important. So you can have an expo hall in the virtual space. There are a lot of ways to do it. All I would say is that essentially it's a web page and you can sell sponsorship ads. So this would be your banner ad. This would be your most expensive spot. Allison, as a news person, you understand how this is laid out. Then we would have a main vendor section. If you were to click on one of these, I'll use AVEX because it's the most fleshed out. You would go into their virtual booth, and their virtual booth could have anything inside of it that you could imagine a website could have: photos, text, videos, call to action, speaker profiles. One of the things that we think is really neat is having a Zoom room, so you have somebody who's actually actively monitoring a Zoom room. So if somebody comes by and wants to go in there, they just click it and they go right in. And they can schedule a meeting anytime by clicking here on the Acuity scheduling app, and just regular sign-up forms: sign up to win a tumbler, sign up to win a t-shirt, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a great way in the corporate space to do something cool. On the other side of things, we have the engagement side of things, right? So this is called the virtual photo booth. This is avex.virtualbooth.co. This is unbranded. So upper left-hand corner, that could be your logo. This background could be whatever you wanted it to be. You could change all this text. You go in here and I'm hoping that, hey, there I am. Okay, so now I'm gonna take a selfie. I click snap a selfie, 3, 2, 1. Boom. I get my selfie. I click next. I can throw an overlay over it. So this could be your logo. You click next and you drop any of these in, and you click next, and there's your photo. And I can download this. It all also hits a gallery, so we can make videos out of these things. You can use these to enter a contest to win. The options are pretty endless.
Nice. That's fun.
Did I make it through it?
Yeah, and we're all still online. How about that? I'm curious if people are engaging in this way. I mean, are people willing to enter a Zoom room as a place to network? Or, I mean, is it working?
I think time will tell, but yes, please go ahead, Amy.
I would say, yes, it is working. It's all in how you communicate and gain trust with your clients and with your constituents and the audiences that you wish to serve. And so, you know, we were all giggling just now when the photo booth aspect was coming up. If you are creating virtual spaces within spaces, you're giving people reasons to get excited. And we are in an exciting time right now, because between now and the end of the year, or until a vaccine is out there, we have an opportunity to experiment, but we also have an opportunity to have our clients think big and dream big, and anything is possible online. And like Bruce said, we can do that in a hybrid sometimes. And I see some questions which we can address later about how do you know who comes to the venue and who doesn't, but we can do all of those things and make it still exciting and new.
Okay, so Amy, talk about some of the exciting things you're doing and ways to engage your audience while they're at home.
Absolutely. So we have started to do events in a box, and this is in conjunction with the online events. So the first and foremost, when you send an email telling your guests, your audience, that you are going to be changing to virtual, they're like, okay, that's exciting. So everybody's going to virtual. But when you give them a real bang and a surprise in the mail or through a delivery, and you send them all the things they need to engage with you online, you've just taken it to a whole nother level. So these events in a box are giving your clients, your sponsors, your guests an experience that they can engage with. For example, all of the instructions about how to come online in 5 easy steps or less. You might send a personalized tumbler with a mocktail recipe or a cocktail recipe and all of the ingredients within it. You may send them, personalized and branded ad specialties, which is another way not only to support your ad specialty small businesses, but also to engage them with your brand. And the sky's the limit. So if you're on a reduced budget, you send one type of package. If you have a higher budget, you send another. And you can also engage with your guests by sending them food packages and supporting small businesses, restaurateurs, and caterers, and sending things that way too. But the thing I think I'm most excited about for corporate and nonprofit organizations is the ability to get influencers and celebrities and chefs involved in these virtual experiences, because those are the surprise and delight things that you don't have to tell your guests are going to happen. And then when they do, you're the brand they're going to talk about.
Very cool. Very cool. A lot of questions, as you mentioned, Amy, about hybrid events. And I think that's where we hope we're going to move to fairly soon. So Bruce, maybe you can walk us through what you're thinking. People are asking, how do you decide who's able to come and who isn't? And how do you think about AV and that interactive component?
Yeah, I think hybrid events have already been happening, just not as now, like they're not in the forefront like they're going to be currently. I think the key there is that you have to set up your packages, and then you have to make it worthwhile for the ones that are online to join, in a sense, to pay a fee to attend, so that's not free. And it's going to be a much longer time span than what they're used to being online, because a typical meeting is 6 to 7 hours a day, and you've got the breaks in there, and you've got the transfer of different sessions, so you're going to have space to sell, to promote, for sponsors, for your trade show. For the ones that aren't actually on site, they can see that our trade show virtually, and the people can do an elevator pitch, a short one, for the people that are online. But it gives you a lot of space to work, and like Amy said, be creative and have some fun with it.
Tim, what do you think as far as hybrid goes? How are you thinking that through? What does it look like? Oh, you're muted. Our AV guy.
Yeah, I thought I was having an issue with my microphone, so as an AV guy, I muted. But anyways, I do think that having the virtual event go from 30 minutes, right? People are trying to make these really tight 30 to 45-minute programs that are meant to drive revenue, get people to click on the link, and then get out of there. When you go to hybrid, and Bruce, maybe you can speak a little bit to this, there are going to be some challenges with moving bodies through the space. It is just a fact of life. And so as an AV company, and Amy as a producer, our job is to help you fill that space in the virtual setting. So there may not be a full day of programming for the virtual event. That may be set aside for specific times for them to chime in. And you may need to set extra time in between sessions to let the live event people get from point A to point B. But what I think is really important is peppering in the engagement throughout the day so that people keep returning to the site, coming back to the stream, and interacting with the brand or the message or whatever it is. And I think that's an individual case. I wish I could give you like a silver bullet solution for that, but that is what the planners and the professionals get paid to do, is to hear your message, understand what you're trying to get out there, and then help you build something, me with technology, Amy with planning, to help you back that up both with live and virtual.
Right. It feels, and maybe just because it's new, like it just seems like more work. Thinking of, like you're basically producing a TV show now. I know, Amy, that's your specialty. So can you offer some advice? I mean, obviously the easiest thing we could do is just hire you to help us through it, but how do we go about that?
So I think that what people need to be thinking about is, what is the story that they're looking to tell? I always say that an event is like a television show, right? There's a distinct beginning, middle, and end. And if you've done the event right, you leave them wanting more for the next episode. And so I think that just thinking through the story, knowing that whether it's a hybrid or a very concise virtual event, that you're going to tell this story and you're going to engage the audience, and you're going to look to your internal marketing teams and or your trusted partners out there to guide you through that story. It shouldn't be more difficult. It should actually be more fun in many ways, because you're having an opportunity to drill down the messaging and get it succinct and capture the audiences. And I actually believe, and I've been reading a lot about this recently, that the opportunity for many, many more attendees at these events is right around the corner. And I think that's going to actually be a benefit to these companies and nonprofits who are having events.
Right. I was thinking about that. Now we can pull speakers from anywhere in the world, right? Because they're virtual. It's going to be right. I mean, in some ways, you think it's going to be hard to go back to just, you know, thinking about who's in your backyard now that we've opened this world. So how do you decide with these events, Amy, especially I'm thinking like if it's an awards program or a nonprofit gala, how do you decide what pieces are live and what's recorded or planned in advance? Maybe both you and Tim can speak to that.
Sure. So in my opinion, the parts that are recorded in advance would be videos that you likely were already going to show at the event, the awards presentation, and then the response from the person that's receiving the award. The live components would be your MC, and if you're having an auction, an auctioneer. I'll let Tim speak to how those folks can be in a safe and secure studio that is following all the guidelines. But those would be the ways. And there may be, you know, in some cases, some nonprofits have suggested that they would like their chairs, you know, the chair people of the event to be at that studio as well, safely distanced between speaking opportunities. But those would be the things that I would record. And auctions can still be in real time. And there are really great ways for live auctions to happen as well.
Okay,
absolutely.
Tim?
Yeah, I think, you know, anything where the message won't change with current events can be pre-recorded. Obviously, if I would have recorded something yesterday and I feel the need to talk about current events with the light of what's happening today, I would be bummed that I now either have to do that live and had not planned for it or need to re-record. So you really need to think closely about, is this content rock solid? It will not change. Is this a training? Is this a breakout room that has nothing to do with what's happening around us? I think those are good things to pre-record. Otherwise, you should look at doing live. Again, some of this is speaker preference too. Some people just are not comfortable being live. I don't mind being in front of the camera, but something about doing the Zoom call is really scary because I know that it's happening right now. And that's just my personal preference. I don't mind pre-recording anything. So that would be the one takeaway I'd leave there.
Okay.
Allie, I also wanted to add that I think that sponsors will actually get more value in many cases out of virtual events because their messages will live on. Because what we're seeing and what we're guiding our clients to do, especially in the nonprofit world, is to send out that 45 to 60 minute, it's usually 45 to 50 minutes with about a 10-minute bumper on either end, but to send that out and have those stories and those messages and those commercials, if you will, live on.
We actually had a question that is timely right now from somebody saying, how do you make sure that you don't overemphasize your sponsors? In some ways it's easy to do when you're at a live event, you know, they get that moment on stage or they get that mention or the sign. How do you strike the right balance in this virtual space?
Well, you're still selling sponsorships, and those sponsorships should be clearly defined as to what it will include. So the extra push is in the life afterwards, but the actual branding moments or rooms to sponsor or, you know, swag that you're sending to your guests in advance, those things are clearly defined.
A lot of questions. I had my own, and they're coming in from our viewers as well about prices. Is all of this going to cost us more doing a virtual event? Less? How does that work?
Tim, do you want to answer first?
Oh, great. Sure. Yeah, I would love to. I think that virtual events from a technology standpoint don't cost as much as the live part of it. So right now, I've noticed that our billing to each customer has gone down a bit. That's not always the case, right? A really small live event that's going virtual might see a small increase in their budget because there aren't as great swings in price depending on how many people, right? You have a, once you hit 500 registrants, you need to boost your Zoom profile up another 500 people. So that costs extra money for the month. But that's not the same as going from a 200 person event to a 1,000 person event in terms of cost live. That's a lot more money. That's a lot different equipment. So those, it's a little bit more consistent. It might go up a little bit for the smaller groups, but generally for the bigger groups, it's gone down a little bit. When we get into hybrid, which I think is really what we're talking about here, we do think that there will be an increase and we'll be looking for ways to sort of double dip on some of those items so that you're not paying twice for them. So how can we provide you either discounts or a simpler program in the live space because there's less people, but still bring some of that excitement into the virtual setting. So you're only paying for it once. And that's going to be a conversation with each client that I think is custom. I hope that helps.
Yeah, Amy, do you want to speak to prices of virtual? And then Bruce, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about how you see prices changing, if at all, once we get back to venues. Amy?
So I would just say that the items to consider when you're budgeting for a virtual event would be marketing partner costs. So if you don't have an internal marketing team and you need to market the event, maybe there's assistance there. An experienced producer cost, which would be an event producer. The audiovisual production costs, which Tim just mentioned. The pre-promotion of the event experience, which could cost nothing if you do that all online, or the time of your team to create that. Any collateral printing. So in a non-hybrid instance, that would be if you are going to send some printed materials ahead of time, or again, the idea of an event in a box as an assistant to your virtual event, and then any giveaways tied to the experience. So I noticed that there was a question about if your budget was already in place, and I think it's just a question of shifting the budget for the goals that you had for the event.
Can you give us a rough idea of what the boxes cost that you've been doing so far?
Sure. The truth is that those boxes can go anywhere from $50 a piece with the box, the postage, the stuff in it, all the way up to, $500 a piece, depending on what you're doing. And when I say that, I'm talking about if you are giving something to a sponsor. If you think about the food and beverage costs that you would have maybe given that sponsor free drinks for the night. Put a quantifying number to that and then assign that to what you're sending, to then be a wash.
Bruce, how are you thinking about cost as we move back into venues?
Yeah, I think the biggest cost is going to be the food. For the ones that are actually attending it with what we're seeing happening right now, just in our own personal grocery bills, there's going to be some costs involved in the food, and it's going to be going up. Hard to say where that falls right now at this moment, since we're probably a few months out. But you're going to have that. As for the rooms, as for the AV, really that cost is the same. It's just what you need to produce it. The room price won't change. The breaks, those will be adjusted accordingly too. But that's where we're seeing a big increase right now is in the food costs. So.
And you were saying, it might be a while before we're doing buffets again, or and plated meals can be more expensive.
Yeah, right now, Allie, is the buffets are pretty much out. We're not gonna be able to do them. So your lunch is gonna have to be either a box lunch or a plated meal, and then also your breaks are gonna have to be more of an individually wrap or grab and go. You're not going to have a buffet where people can just go through and pick, things with their tongues. So that's changing. I think the breaks are going to have to be smaller size. There'll have to be more of them. And I think the planners are going to have to plan some extra time for that, because people really should take the time to go wash their hands before they eat. Even for lunch, if it's a plated, it's just going to take a little more time. So I think planners are so used to, putting 300 to 500 people through a buffet in 15, 20 minutes. That's not going to be the case. It's going to take some extra time. So I think they're going to have to allow more for their lunches and their breaks.
And probably more staffing on your end too, if now you're talking about a sit-down meal that used to be a buffet situation.
Yeah, the staff, it will be between, we're going to have an attendant at different stations. We're going to have more staff serving, and even carrying. There used to be a lot where people would do both. And I think now, because of the personal protection and what the different ones are going to be required to wear, there's going to be some separation there where we'll have somebody that just carries food and somebody that just serves to the tables. That's the direction it's heading as of today.
Amy, are these some of the things that the Events Coalition is thinking through right now? Can you talk a little bit about that? We have a lot of people who are interested in learning more.
Yeah, so the Minnesota Live Events Coalition is newly created, a group of vendors in all areas of the event community in the Twin Cities, and we're hoping the rest of the state as well, kind of came together quickly, similarly to how the restaurant groups came together to say, we need some sort of a gold standard for how we can move forward in the event industry. And so that we are all on the same page, doing the same thing. And that people like Bruce, who have clearly been kept up to speed on a daily basis about what we can and can't do, is happening universally across the industry. And so our website is in the works. It's going up soon, hopefully in the next few days. This has been very quick to get to market. So, so for those of you that haven't heard about it yet, we know you're interested and we're going to get it out there, but you can all email me directly if you are interested, and I will make sure that you get on the list so that as soon as we go live, if you're interested in being included, you can be. We've been working with congressmen and a liaison in the governor's office to share with them the best practices that we believe as an event community we need. Like Bruce was saying, we also as vendors have to feel safe doing our jobs. And with the guest stipulations, remember that if we are able to gather as a group of 20, that's 20 including your vendors. And so there are so many things to think about. And are you going, even in the hybrid world, are people going to understand the need for gloves and masks and somebody standing there taking people's temperature? There are so many things to think through. And so the Minnesota Events Coalition is trying to put that all in one succinct place so that you can see in real time how things are changing.
Great. And meanwhile, while we're virtual, which is sounding a little more relaxing at the moment when you bring up all of that, Amy, people are wondering, Zoom fatigue. We're all doing it. We're online all day. Now you're spending money and great effort to do an event for your business or charity or whatever it is. How do we fight Zoom fatigue and keep people engaged online?
Well, I'll tell you how we fight it. Tim and I have been brainstorming really amazing ways to engage the audiences and make them really creative and fun. And somebody asked about how do you engage all the senses in order to do that? It's when you're sending them what you're sending them ahead of time, you have something to smell, something to taste, something to hear, which you'll hear and see online, and you'll get all of those things. So I think be creative and then you won't have the fatigue.
Yeah, I think one big part of it is being authentic, right? Having a message that is authentically you, whatever your organization needs to say, make sure that you're working with somebody to help you craft the message that is real and not pre-produced sounding and feeling. Nothing is worse than going on a Zoom call and just being like, oh my gosh, this is just a sales pitch, right? Like a 2-hour sales pitch. It needs to be real and it needs to matter to them. Otherwise, you're going to get fatigue. And I don't know that there's any way around it. I will say that goes back to some of my initial optimism about this industry. We want to be together. We don't want to do this boxes thing any more than we have to. We are all pivoting and we are all going to do this for as long as it takes. And we're here for you guys to help you solve these problems. But we want to be together and eventually we will. And it might take a while, but we do know that when people can meet, they're going to. We all went through 2009 on this call, and we know what that was like. Everybody said, oh my gosh, meetings are over. It's all going to be online. GoToMeeting was the big thing at the time, and now it's Zoom. Well, it's all the same thing. And I think eventually we'll probably have a small virtual audience with a big live audience. And aren't we all real excited to get back to that?
And hug again.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say really quick before we move on, there's a guy, and I wish I could remember his name, but every day at noon, he does a Zoom dance party with like 10,000 people, and everybody just dances in front of their camera. That's what I mean by an authentic experience. I don't know why you would do that, because I don't really dance much, but like my wife did it and I was like, this is actually pretty cool. So I got at her camera and I was dancing with her. I mean, it's all about having fun and finding something authentic.
You know, and I think sometimes maybe with business events, we take ourselves a little too seriously. We feel like it has to be really serious. How do we find that authenticity and make it fun? You know, I mean, it's one thing to talk about some of these crazy things with a wedding. What do we do when it's a corporate event? I mean, a lot of questions about your photo booth, Tim. Do you think that has application for a business gathering? Amy thinks yes. Amy, what do you think?
A photo, that's a shareable moment. Think about it. It's a shareable moment. You get your guests to take those photos and then share it out with your brand on it. And so someone asked, how do you feel like it's your authentic self? Because look at the NFL draft. We went into everyone's home. We've now been inside everyone's home and everyone's private places. There is nothing more authentic than that. So this, when you can break down that barrier, what you see is what you get when it comes to the four of us on these screens right now, right? So if you can just stay true to who you are, like Tim said, we're all in it. This is it.
Yeah. Yeah. The cohesive part of it is that we all are in the same situation. So, you know, while I don't know that the photo booth is perfect for everybody, there are going to be some people that think it's really cool and that jives with their culture and what they want to do. So I would say do that. But there is no one solution that works for everybody. All the rules that you thought you had are all gone. They're all gone. So try what works. You know, try things, talk to your providers, talk to your partners, and have a conversation about each individual instance.
Bruce, do you think you can have fun with business events?
Yes, you know, I really do. There's so many different people you can bring in for that type of, whether it's a comedian, whether it's, you know, just somebody that's a real motivated speaker. You can have a lot of laughs, you know, and keep it more light. You know, the ones that I always struggle with are the continuing education, because they're sort of boring. They're just, they have to get to the points. They got to teach certain things and they're out the door, but there's no reason why they can't have some other fun stuff in, you know, before, after that key speaker. You can just, you know, you can add in the different old drummers, jugglers. I mean, just different things like that, just to spice it up a little bit. You don't just have to have somebody at a podium speaking.
Right. Here's a question for all of you about registration fees. Virtual events have sort of wiped out registration fees right now. Do you see opportunity to charge for virtual events, or do we just have to wait until we're back in spaces? Amy?
I think that there are opportunities where they make sense. So those opportunities may be VIP experiences that are different from, you know, the webinar itself or the meeting itself. I think for nonprofit organizations, it's becoming a win, because then the dollars you would have spent on the ticket are now going in addition to donations. And so that is helpful. But I do think there's a place. I think that what you would have spent on a typical registration will probably go down a bit. But listen, we're all in business to make a living. And so if you put that mindset in it, I think we're going to get there. I don't think it's going to happen this summer, but I think as we head towards the fall, those registration fees will have to come back in some form.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Bruce or Tim?
I think you look at Zoom itself. I mean, Zoom originally was free, and they said 40 minutes, but they're letting you go way past 40 minutes when it first started. Well, now 2 months into it, now they won't let you go past 40 minutes. They sort of cut you off, and now you have to buy. So I think it's a lot of the same way. And I think for the ones online, you have to get creative on what you offer them special. You know, whether maybe there's a special session that you only see online, or / you know, maybe it's what you send to them. those are the things that the planners have to think out and carefully think about and reach out and get, like Amy said, very creative. So.
Okay.
I have seen educational and training content retain a registration fee, even if it's a little bit less. So if your content is, you know, teaching somebody something, then there's a natural, you know, give and take there.
Okay. We have so many good questions. I'm going to try to get to as many as we can. Bruce, help us think through a few things in real space. A lot of people asking about, like, will we ever be able to have coffee stations again? Is there a way to do a carving station? Could we have a buffet, but somebody serves it through plexiglass? Are those things you're thinking about right now?
We are. Typical buffets, you know, if they're not permanent, they don't have the plexiglass. So like for our facility here, typically it's tables and people walk their way through it and help themselves. So we'd have to actually have a server at each location, which really doesn't work very well in our setting. So I think what it'll come down to is, if you can't do it without using your hands, then we have to come up with a way. Let's say coffee. Coffee, typically you walk up to a coffee and you take and you open the spigot to get your coffee. We're going to have to create our machines and turn it so that they can take their coffee cup and just press it, and it will come out just like a soda machine does, or an ice machine. Those are the things that we're finding, and it's amazing how many things have been created already for this that are now surfacing. You know, our bartenders, there's going to have to be some plexi in front of them, and probably maybe even a face shield. So that's going to be a barrier that wasn't there before, but it's something we're going to have to do until we're past this pandemic.
Okay. Tim, lots of questions about your software. Everybody wants to know about everything you're doing. How do people demo it on their own if they want to? Can they? Are there other software solutions that you might suggest beyond AVEX?
Absolutely. And yeah, and just to speak to what you just said, I wanted to be here as a subject matter expert. Obviously, me being on screen is really valuable for AVEX, but it's really about having a partner that you trust. You know, that is like the most important thing. And if you have somebody that you trust, call them up and ask them what they can do for you. We have some solutions. Please call us too. But I think if people are interested and they want to check out avexstreams.com, I'll send it out in the chat feed to everybody. They can go there, browse the website. There's some stuff on there. You can fill out the form and a salesperson will get back to you. The virtual photo booth was added to AVEX Streams today. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but I know it's on there somewhere. Important thing to note, you know, on our product, we're bringing in other products. So if you have something that you like, there's a good chance we can link to it, link from it, and make it work seamlessly, right? Amy and I are doing a bunch of events with Zoom where we're building a website and then we're linking over to Zoom, having a thing, and then coming back to the website and then looking at some photos and then going back to Zoom. So it's really about using the tools that are available and just having that landing page be that central core focus. It can look and it can look like anything you really want to and have it be set up any way that you want to. So super flexible on that standpoint.
And that's really the key, to be able to work with a trusted partner that you can customize specific to what you need. I also wanted to share that the publication BizBash has a new virtual event guide with lots of resources on it for things like a photo booth that could be worked on or shared with your audiovisual partner. So the BizBash virtual event guide, you go online, you sign up to receive it, you can download it. It's a great resource.
People asking Amy about what a virtual reception looks like. And we know people are doing, you know, breakout rooms and opportunities for networking. How do you really facilitate that in a virtual space?
Well, I would venture to guess that quite a few of you have seen the Zoom breakout rooms. I think in some of the events that we're working on right now, we're scheduling time for you to see each other's faces in as many people as you want to be there in the beginning of an event, possibly in the middle of an event, and then again at the end of the event, because those need to be the kinds of networking opportunities that you would have had in a face-to-face situation. And so it is really important to think through, if you know you have 45 to 50 minutes to have someone's attention, is, you know, you don't necessarily want to put them in a speed dating scenario or a speed networking scenario, but how do you get to see their faces? And so we're working on ways to creatively kind of share your contact, right? And then potentially take that networking opportunity in a one-on-one face-to-face after the event. We're seeing people be very giving in terms of, I mean, these days you want the lists of what you're signing up to participate in, and you are being asked, would you be willing to give us your contact information to share with the attendees? So you still have those privacy issues being considered, but they're there.
I've seen a lot of tips, many of them corny, about, you know, icebreakers for your Zoom meeting. And, you know, there are always those extroverts in the group who are going to put on costumes or do crazy things. And then everyone else is like, really? So any advice from all of you event gurus on engaging ways to, you know, kind of make the department meeting more fun and exciting, or just, you know, like Bruce, you were talking about education events. How do we lighten the mood in a way that doesn't feel just, you know, corny? Amy, do you want to start?
Okay, I'll start. Yes, so there's a whole bunch of ways. We're working with DJs to do virtual dance parties. We're working with, you know, using interactive gaming, a moderated game room. So if you want to create a happy hour for your team or your department, again, it can be the Mocktail version. You can have a moderated gaming opportunity that could be super fun, a little bit quirky, and that's something that you can do yourself, or if you want to do it on a larger scale, you can do it with your audiovisual partner, and that's really fun. There are so many opportunities. There's a gentleman out there locally, I believe the company is a Proper Pour, and he's doing cocktail classes and you know, mixology with your guests. So there's a ton of opportunities out there, and it's also a really great way to support small business during this time.
Great point. Any other
Absolutely.
ideas, Tim?
One thing that we've been playing around with is trivia. So having a trivia, dividing people into teams, you can pepper in some content like about the company, right? And having that either start or end the meeting to kind of give people something to, like, you know, razz each other about and compete and have some fun in a team setting. It's really, you know, it's really about team building at that point, but something to spice it up a little bit.
Spice it up.
Yeah.
Bruce, any ideas?
Well, I would say any meeting's all about the food. So I would say if you have everybody cook their own little dessert, and you can see what everybody made and have some chuckles and some fun with that. You know,
Virtual potluck.
Yeah, the biggest thing I think that on a lot of this is you got to remember to have a moderator to help run the event or / the happy hour. You know, to be able to call out and keep everybody active, because sometimes if you get a larger group, there'll be one or two that just sit quiet the whole time. So I think by having somebody that's actually watching it and, you know, calling their name out, it gives them a buy-in then personally, and also it keeps them more involved.
Well, speaking of food, I was invited to one, like an annual meeting where they're sending pizzas to everybody in advance, and then you get your instructions and log on. But somebody's asking, you know, if you do a giveaway, or Amy, if you do a box and that goes out in advance, how do you make sure people really do actually log on and that you haven't already lost them before they join the meeting?
Well, a couple of things. It's all about timing. So if it's a local audience, they can be delivered, they can even be hand delivered. You obviously, if you were going to be supporting small business, local caterers, restaurants doing takeout, etc., you're going to want that to be same day. And so you tease it out. You send an online notification, you know, be on the lookout for at this time, or that type of thing. You just have to think it through. Proper planning prevents poor performance.
Wow. Say that again. Proper planning.
Planning prevents poor performance. My dad taught me that.
I'm going to make a t-shirt that says
that. What about other platforms? People want to know, are you three seeing anyone other than Zoom who's really, you know, disrupting the space of virtual events, or really real winners out of this?
Well, Zoom Zoom sort of read the crystal ball a little bit, right? They came up with something really, really flexible, free, and you know, they understand that it's about having a big user base, right? Nothing would be better for them than this call where there's 300 people who are not users watching the platform for free. They get to just click the link and hop on. And now they have their email address, right? So they can market to them. So they were way ahead of the curve in terms of obviously not knowing that a pandemic was coming, but really sunk a lot of money into this. Zoom's been around for many years too. But there's of course many other programs. A lot of them are very business heavy, right? Cisco owns a product called WebEx. There's GoToMeeting, there's GoToWebinar. I would say for the money, Zoom does a good job of good video and audio quality. I'm also saying that so that the algorithm doesn't hear me and then turn me off randomly. Microsoft Teams, I just saw somebody mention that. Microsoft Teams is great. They just added some functionality to allow you to bring in guest users. Our company uses Teams internally for all of our internal meetings, and it's great. Zoom is one of the only ones that lets you have like really big gallery views, of all of the different tiles of video. So I think that's a neat way to do it. We just did one for virtual commencement where everybody stand in front of their computer and clap for the virtual attendees, and then we recorded that screenshot and are putting it into a video. It's a really nice way to do it. So I think that they are the leader in that space. Free conference call works. Look, there are a lot of free products out there, and all I would say is that if you're doing a business meeting and you log on and you get the little prompt like this meeting was given to you by freeconferencecall.net, I'm not saying that that delegitimizes you, but there is a certain level of professionalism that I try to guide my customers to. And Zoom for now is the one that I think is the most functional and flexible. It cannot be embedded. Right now, you have to do some pretty sneaky things to embed it. So it does have to be a link over to the Zoom app for now. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. With the time we have remaining, maybe we can just sort of, let's walk people through two things. Amy and Tim, right now, we have an event on the calendar. We haven't pulled the trigger yet on canceling or postponing or moving virtual. What are the steps and in what order that we should take? And then Bruce, on the physical event side, maybe you can walk us through some of the things we should be thinking about. Amy, what should we do today with those events that are still kind of hanging out there with question marks?
Don't cancel. That's the first thing. Do not cancel your event. Either postpone if you can, or bring it virtual. And if you're going to bring it virtual, connect with, first of all, your internal team, decide what the messaging is that you're trying to accomplish with this event, or what the goal of the event is if it's fundraising. Reach out to trusted partners. Before you reach out to any additional trusted partners, contact all of your existing vendors. Find out what their rules and guidelines are. I would say I feel very fortunate that almost all of my local event partners, even some of my national ones, have decided that they will transfer your deposits if it's a physical space for up to 12 months, or if they have to shift again because of the pandemic, they'll shift again with no additional fees. We're hopeful that that is going to happen as much as it can. So contact those vendors. The venue itself is one first and foremost that you have to hold on to maybe for a future event. The other vendors are being creative with how they can help you. And then figuring out what that budget's going to be like to take this as a hybrid or virtual, and work with trusted partners to make it happen. But don't wait, because if you're proactive versus reactive on this, you're going to save money. You're not going to lose certain deposits. You're going to have great communication, and you're going to have a team that wants to help you succeed.
Bruce, speaking of making those decisions now, I mean, for people who have events, you know, not in the summer, but fall or winter, are those still on the calendar? And what are you advising?
It's really a mix. Sometimes it depends on the type of event. Like, let's say medical groups. Most of the medical groups have all canceled for this year and have all been pushed to next year or the following. Yeah, plus from. So I think you have to look at your group. I also think you have to look at how many are traveling and if they're going to be allowed to travel, because a lot of corporate groups won't allow their staff to travel. So that might also reduce your numbers. Plus, you had a room that was, 1,000 square foot, and now you have to go to 3,000 square foot to hold what you currently have. So there's going to be a lot of flexibility, and I think you have to maybe on your registration start putting in some type of box if they're able to attend or not, or if they have to do virtual. There might be some checks there that you want to add to your registration, because if all of a sudden it opens up and we can hold these meetings, you're going to have to look at your registration and say, okay, do I go by first come first serve? Do you go by what package they bought? Those are the different things that you're going to have to look at for the future.
And Tim, the software seems to be the most elusive, I think, to some of us who are technology challenged. So some steps to take now, and also maybe we could just end with any thoughts you have on security. Some people concerned about that. We've heard about the Zoom, pop-ins and things of that nature. So software things to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just saw that somebody posted, check out some local vendors that can speak to more privatized platforms and custom platforms. And I think that's a great idea. Going back to Amy's original point, talk to the people that you work with and ask them what they're doing. We also work with a lot of platforms that are not public, Facebook, YouTube, all of that stuff. I'm not going to get into those things. Just know that those do have better security. They are more expensive and they work really great. We use them every single day. I would say that on the security front, there's a lot you can do to lock things down. When you lock things down, they do become less accessible. That is sort of a give and take, the nature of the beast, as it were. However, knowing that when you're putting something on the internet, I am not a programmer, much to my own chagrin. And there is quite a bit that can be done to sort of thwart some of those things that you have. So if your group is releasing sensitive information, if you're at all related to the government, you need to be very, very, very careful about what platform you choose. We're being a little bit cavalier about use Facebook, use YouTube, and all of those things are fine. But generally, I would say that that is another case-by-case scenario. You need to talk to people about where this is going to live. A lot of companies want all of their stuff to live behind a firewall inside of their own intranet, right? So that it doesn't ever touch the public intranet. And that all can happen, but that's a deeper conversation that you should be having with the partner specifically.
And that's why we'll give you a call right after this. We, of course, are all about sharing all of the messages. And so we will be posting this webinar online. It'll be at tcbmag.com soon. We'll send an email out to everyone if you want to share it with your friends. You want to go back to take some notes. Thank you all so much for all of the great advice. So helpful as we think about this. And it's really about being creative. I know we have to let Amy get to her next engagement, because at 1 o'clock every day, she finds reasons to celebrate on Instagram. So you can go follow her there at Amy Zaroff. And Amy, you'll keep us posted on the Events Coalition.
I will. And I've seen quite a few people I know have already been emailing me. And so you're welcome to include my email address. And I hope you will reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions, connect you with the right people, and hopefully work together to make this beneficial for all of us.
Great. Well, on behalf of everyone from Twin Cities Business, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Tim from AVEX, Bruce, Earle Brown, and of course, Amy Zaroff. Thank you for your expertise. And we look forward to the next iteration of events and meetings. Thanks for joining us today, everybody.
Thank you, Allie.
Take care.